right, thanks for sticking with me. So I'm going to speak from here because there's like a little technical problem, so I need to be close to my computer. But thank you for sticking with me here. There are lots of interesting workshops today, so it's very cool that you take the time to hear me out. And the idea to come speak here really came from a very personal perspective. I launched a company a few years ago back in Brussels, Belgium, with Maxime right here. And we started this with the idea that we wanted to make manufacturing more accessible for local communities. So we decided to start to develop open source manufacturing machines. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about what we decided to build and are still building today. But we really started with this instinctive belief that digital fabrication, local manufacturing, fab labs had the opportunity to change the world and to answer to some of the most pressing social and environmental challenges. Yet when we started looking for funding for Mechanica and we really got out of the Fab Lab scene and tried to speak with impact investors, it started to get really hard to convince people of that idea. And so I started a journey of documentation through a lot of readings, through history, through sociology, and trying to connect the dots a little bit to see what would bring social changes and how what we're doing could bring some social changes as well. So that's what I came to share with you today, and then I'm going to explain a little bit more our experience and our journey with Mechanica. So without further ado, the topic of today is local manufacturing, how to create resilient communities in a globalized world. I only realized how ambitious it was after it got accepted by the FAB City team, so I have to live up to it. But before starting to discuss about the how and about the strategy of what we can do, I wanted to start thinking about the why as well, and why local manufacturing communities are really important, to my opinion, and are going to be of greater importance in the future. And to me, it all comes down to imagining a desirable future for production, being in my head something like an interconnected network of local manufacturing communities that provide for the world. There are a few key words in this sentence: interconnection, of course, local and communities. And speaking about the why, I really wanted to start thinking about why those different elements. So let's start with why local. And local to me is not about distance. It's really about thinking how local is opposed to global. And about starting with a critique of the existing economic system. And there's a lot of ways to describe the current economic system, but there's a sentence I read not so long ago from a French philosopher called Yves Citon that I really liked. And he says that we live today in an overproduction world where companies have to fight harder and harder for your attention to buy their products. And I think this really puts an emphasis on what's wrong in the current economic system. We collectively produce way too much, yet we don't share anything fairly yet. Commercial companies are really using profit as their main or even sole indicator, and we spend larger and larger amount of money trying to get the attention of people, trying to cut through the noise to sell our products, and yet we call it economic growth. And I think there's something that could be done better here. The consequences of this are quite obvious, yet interesting to focus on. There are lots of social and environmental externalities to this economic system. Attention is getting very expensive, and I'm really talking about attention because I think it's a key element of the economy we live into right now. I don't think we live anymore in a offer and demand economy. We really live in a attention-grabbing economy where the companies who kind of have the power to attract the attention are the ones who are really focusing most of the economic value. The supply chains are getting extremely complex and not transparent, and so it's getting very hard when you buy a product to know what you're buying and what are the externalities of the product you're buying. And globally, we're really in a movement of cultural impoverishment where big actors are taking the space of most local actors everywhere. This is a picture of the Grand Place of Brussels, which is like an amazing place with very beautiful buildings, and yet you have like a fucking Starbucks right in the middle of it, and it's kind of the case in every major city everywhere in the world. And I must say, I'm really impressed by how Bhutan is preserving their cultural heritage and the way they really want to develop economically while still putting a lot of emphasis on that. And I think it's quite unique in the world at the moment. But so, if we get asked what local means, to me it's not about distance. To me, local manufacturing is manufacturing that tries to raise transparency just by creating more local human link between the people who produce the stuff and the people who buy the stuff. And it's also local manufacturing is manufacturing that takes into account the local culture, diversity, and the resources. And so therefore, if we speak about local in this aspect, locally desirable for a future of production. The same question could be asked about why community, and community is voluntarily a broad, a very vague term. It can really relate to a lot of different forms of organizations, yet you have this idea of cooperation and collective in it. So I think that's why it's a very interesting word for this. And you're obviously familiar with the Fab Labs community, here about the makerspace, the hackerspace. Some of them are really targeting towards manufacturing and production. A lot of them are also working more on education, but I think there are also other type of manufacturing communities that are really interesting and that we should work with. And I just wanted to share two examples from Brussels that are outside of the Fab Lab community and that show how diverse in terms of organization, size, way of working, financing, manufacturing communities could be. So the first one is called the Micro Factory. It's actually a space where we kind of started Mechanica back in the days with Maxime. And it's a collective space where you have woodworkers and metal workers that decided that in single space, they would split the price of big manufacturing machines and really share the space, share the machines as commons to try to commonize what was expensive in their job and be able to live from their work. So it's really there for manufacturing and production basis. And they are organized as a cooperative, completely self-organized, completely horizontal, direct democracy. It's very interesting the way they're working. What's interesting as well is that they keep evolving. So every time there are new members coming in, they really are making an evolution of the structure itself. A second example that's quite famous in Brussels is called La Vallée. La Vallée is not per se a manufacturing place. It's actually a space that's owned by a private actor called Smart. And the role of Smart is to provide a legal entity for small artists and craftspeople that are not big enough to start their own company. And so they provide the legal entity, they provide the space, they provide shared spaces as well, like exhibition spaces, places where you can organize events, network, etc. And even though this way it's not organized as a cooperative and the members are not really working together to create commons. It's a very vivid network of people who are able to make their crafts work thanks to this network. So this shows just in Brussels two very different examples of what I would call manufacturing communities, but I'm pretty sure that here you have a lot of other examples in your head. Yeah. I also have a few pictures. Those are some of my friends in La Vallée. So they have like a ceramic workshop. And so in the same space, you have like people doing ceramics, you have graphic designers, you have people doing woodworking, and they really all work together and connect the dots and do common projects. And it's a really vivid network, very, very interesting to see what they're doing. And so I think it's interesting to see what exists today, but what I was trying to see as well for the last 2 years was to try to go a little bit back in history and try to find some collective moments, some collective organization that really brought some change in the world, trying to see if there were some learnings that we could have from their perspective. And I found myself reading a lot about different revolutions in Europe, especially France and Spain. Those two people really love revolution. They have revolution like every 50 years or so. But I think there are some very interesting knowledge to have from there. So I wanted to start with an event that took place in Paris in 1871. I don't know if there's any French people here. I see. You know what happened then? Yeah, exactly. So 1789, you have the French Revolution that most people have heard about. And during that time, there was like an autonomous government that was decided for Paris and that thrived for a bit more than a century. And then in 1871, you have a war between France and Prussia, which was like the former German Empire. And after the loss of France, Prussia, Germany, and the French government decided to remove this autonomy from the city. They wanted to get back to Paris and to include them in the French Empire. And the citizens, the workers from Paris, decided that they would not let this happen, and so they made their own revolution. They rose, they took the arms, and they kicked the existing government out of Paris. They decided to set up like a completely autonomous new government, and they did some pretty amazing and avant-garde things, like very radical forms like separation of church and state, abolition of night works for the workers, organization of cooperative workshops for the workers as well, a lot of solidarity and social movements that were put together. And this is used by most historians in Europe as one of the main historical event. It only lasted a few months. One of the main historical events of what a complex egalitarian society could look like. Unfortunately, a few months later, it got completely crushed by the German Empire. It's called the Bloody Week, and most of them died. The history is not always with the best people. But the key learnings from this event, I think, is that with significant involvement, some cooperative movement can really emerge spontaneously, and also that there's a possibility of larger and multi-level, multi-scale organization based on direct democracy. So complexity is not the issue here to try to make something more egalitarian and more interesting. The second event I wanted to share was the Spanish Revolution of 1936. I don't know if there are any Spanish people here. No? One here? All right. I hope I'm not saying anything wrong about this event. But so in 1936, you have the start of a civil war between the Republicans and the Nationalists. Basically, the Nationalists are the fascist party from Franco, who just did a coup d'etat, and the Republicans like this broad alliance between a lot of different political factions. What's happening in Spain is that a few years earlier, you have like the anarchist movement, who's really influenced by the work of a French philosopher called Proudhon. And what Proudhon does is he works a lot on mutualization and on self-management. And so what the Spanish did is that they decided to translate the work of Proudhon and also to spread it widely through new newspapers, through conferences, through local gathering, really trying to spread ideas in the population. And what's happening is that at the start of the war, spontaneously, thanks to all this knowledge that was shared for the previous year, you have a lot of local communities, local collectivities everywhere in Spain that start to organize themselves to try to provide during the beginning of the civil war. And so the workers seize control of the factories, of the public services. They implement a lot of self-management. A lot of small farms in the rural areas are voluntarily collectivized, operated as commune. And it's still a very important movement in European evolution on the role of commune and the role of local actors in countries. Again, 1939, they are the losers of history since Franco and the fascists won and established like a fascist state for a few years. But I think the key learnings from this as well is that it's very important to give access to knowledge to as many people as possible, to diffuse it and also to vulgarize it. So most people can understand, have ideas, and to create pre-existing collective practices and organizations so that when there's a rupture movement, you already have some things that are there and that's unable to create bottom-up new organization. And 80 years later in Spain, again, and I think this is a heritage from the original Spanish Revolution of 36. In 2011, there's also in Spain one of the most important social movement of Europe in the 21st century. It's called the 15M movement because it started on the 15th of May. And so 3 years after 2008, economic crisis, high unemployment, a lot of corruption in the government, high inflation. And so you have like spontaneous protest that starts in actually 58 cities in Spain, and people start to coordinate themselves through social media. And it starts a very broad and decentralized movement of protests and social experiments across the whole country that lasts actually a few months, where they prevent eviction from squats, they establish food banks, they occupy empty buildings for social centers, they really create like strong municipalities where they decide that they will support more local businesses than broader businesses. And this deeply changed the politics in Spain for the following years. And maybe the last learnings from there is that when the need or the desire for change is strong, people are able to spontaneously self-organize, communicate together, and develop bottom-up decentralized institution. And so if you think about the learnings of those three events separately, when the desire for change is strong, and I think the desire for change is starting to be very strong as of today in a lot of countries compared to the global economy, and that you have pre-existing practice and common goals or common knowledge that's shared, people are able to join a movement, self-organize, bottom-up institutions, and really start to make a movement that makes a change. So coming back to our question about why working with community, well, if community is about diversity of sizes, organizations, some are homogeneous, some are heterogeneous. If it's about shifting values to something more cooperative than just competition, and if it's about creating the space where bottom-up other organization and institution can come up, I think community is desirable as well. So we come back to this desirable production future about interconnected local manufacturing communities to provide for the world. I think we've talked about local and communities, so let's now talk about how, and I think the how is about the interconnection in itself. And for this, I want to start by just projecting step by step how I would imagine like a little thought exercise, how I would imagine an interconnected community of local manufacturing communities. So right now we have like some isolated manufacturing communities, some are fab labs, some are other forms, cooperatives, some are companies, small factories. They are completely organized differently. Some are highly hierarchical, very hard to say in English. Some are completely horizontal and self-organized. Some have like direct democracy and those things. And they are basically self-centers. They are kind of trying to provide for their members against the global economy. They don't wait a lot in terms of production compared to the global production economy. And they are linked to each other somehow through some networks like the FAB Lab networks, through internet communication. But basically, there are lots of disparities there. I think the first step would be to try to help them connect together through commons, through common institutions that would really help them thrive, help them work together, and help them start to be more visible and have more weights towards the global economy. Bit by bit, thanks to this, you could have like more communities joining bit by bit, with still a huge variety of local diversity, depending on the culture, depending on the way people want to get organized. And the idea would be to reach a moment of critical mass being the moment where the alternative is so visible and so interesting that a lot of people want to join, that a lot of people are interested into going into the movement as well, and where this model and this local manufacturing can finally really have a weight compared to the global economy. So let's now start to talk about the how, and I really think there are two key elements to help local communities thrive and connect together. The first one is a very strategic element, being like, what are the strengths of connected local manufacturing communities compared to larger global companies, and how can we leverage those strengths? What would be the strategy here? The second thing is, how do we develop collaborative ecosystem where we truly switch from competition to cooperation? Sounds easy to say. I think it's very hard to do in practice. You quickly end up in current world into competing with each other, even with the best will. And so how do we build a place and some commons where this is truly possible? For strategy, I wanted to do a little microeconomic exercise. Again, it's very simplified thought exercise, but just trying to identify the strength and what we could leverage. And so I was imagining if I need to buy a chair, I'm in Brussels, I have like two options. One is a global industry actor called IKEA, for example, not to cite anyone. And on the side, you have like a small actor, a little woodworker that can sell me a chair as well. IKEA can provide me a chair for $100, and the local woodworkers, well, the chair is a little bit nicer. I can customize it a little bit. Maybe its life will be a little bit longer, but the price is quite the double. What's interesting to see is when you split the unit economics of the item you're buying, you're really able to see where the company or the woodworker are placing their value and where we could have some leverage. So on the left, I really went from the public financial statement of IKEA to try to understand a little bit their unit economics. So they don't spend a lot of money on design because I think they have a small team of designers that does a lot of product and then a lot of volumes from those products. The production itself, so material plus the workers, is about $19 on 100. So when you buy a chair from IKEA, really you have $21 of real value for the product itself, and then the rest is more about infrastructure and what's around it. And so they have a lot to pay about transport, about marketing, about infrastructure, their shops, their online shops, all the teams, legal, HR, etc. And also they need to send money back to their shareholders. And so for IKEA, 12% of the revenue they make, they send back to their shareholders, which has a huge impact on what you're buying. When you go to a woodworker, it's way more straightforward and way more simple. Most of the money is spent on the production, being like mostly the material. Hopefully, this woodworker works with local material. The rest is about a little bit of marketing, a little bit of design, and then of course the salary. And there's only one salary to pay for the woodworker itself. But it's something quite more simple. And so what could collective institution bring to this woodworker to reduce the cost and be more competitive towards IKEA, for example? One of the ideas would be to have access to open source product designs that could be shared and that could reduce, for example, the price of design, starting from open source standard templates, modifying them for local diversity, local culture or resources, but being able to reduce the prices there. Second leverage could be around attention. So it seems to me that spending a lot of money on marketing attention for craftspeople is not their core job. And I think there could be like community aspects and movements that could help find more easily local woodworkers and try to help them and not spend too much time and money on marketing. And then the last thing that could be done is to work on the manufacturing machines the woodworker have access to, trying with digital fabrication, for example, to help reduce the cost or the time of production, or the possibility to make small series in order to reduce a little bit the cost of production. On the other side, you have global externalities that could play in favor of the woodworker and against the global industry. For example, in last year, you had like high inflation, you had huge uncertainties in terms of energy and transport prices, in terms of materials as well. You had, like in countries like Belgium, a lot of index on salaries. And so if you combine the two movements, it could be that the difference between choosing between a local product and a global product is not so different. And if it's not so different, then maybe with more transparency, people would more easily buy local products. Yeah. So the three key elements for strategy, to my opinion, are to create common institution and commons around design, production, and attention for the local manufacturing communities. Then regarding collaborative ecosystems, I think there are three key elements that are important to switch from competition to cooperation. The first one is common goals. We need to foster local diversity while still looking in the same direction globally to rely more and more people. Those goals should be easily understandable and easily shared as well. The second is to develop the dots, the connection between the local manufacturing communities. And those should be the development of institutions linked to the three leverage I've cited right now. And to my opinion, those institutions should be international by essence. We live like in a connected world. They should be non-profit, develop bottom up to really solve operational problems, and be also radically democratic. And the third one is to manage to shift value from personal wealth to having true value in collaborating into social good and into the community value. So now the million-dollar question is, okay, this is a great idea, but what do we do from there? What are those common goals? What are those collective institutions? How do we work together? I'm not coming here with an answer on the form itself, because I think we should not stop a specific idea on the form. It should be something evolving. But I have a few ideas on the content itself. For design, we could imagine open source platform where you can share like open source designs of product in every type of crafts, for woodworkers, for ceramics people, for fashion design and those things, with kind of a standard type of files that everybody could take locally, adapt to their local needs, and start from there to reduce their design cost. I really think this should be something as a non-profit or a foundation for it to really work. I've seen a lot of private companies trying to do this kind of things to lock up the user, and it's actually a bit the opposite of what we would need to do for supporting local manufacturing communities. For production, we should work on open source tooling and machines and knowledge to use them. And this is actually what we've worked on with Mechanica, and so the next step is I'm going to explain you a little bit what we are trying to build there and how we separate a commercial company, which is Mechanica, to all the open source resources that we're creating. And maybe for attention, that's the hardest, since we almost all here, everyone in the world depends a lot on the big attention grabbing company, on the GAFA. I have a few ideas, but if someone is like, great idea to work on this, I think they're onto something. It's really one of the key elements. But what could be done is try to hack a little bit the system and create, for example, collective pods where we give kudos to every local or open source or open hardware companies. We try to help each other so that when we need reviews or when we post something on social media, we're able to automatically kind of hack the algorithm and give some engagement. Or there could be something like an open source non-profit marketplace, like a bit opposite to what Etsy is doing, but something with almost no commission and an algorithm that would really push local crafts and not like crafts everywhere, but very local crafts. Yeah, this is Maxime right there. And so now I want to speak a bit more about the production aspect and the open source manufacturing machines. So this is a journey we started with Mechanica 3 years ago with Maxime right here and Martin that stayed in Brussels. And we really started with the idea of making open source manufacturing machines more accessible broadly. And we are doing this with 3 different pillars. So open source machine, and I'm gonna show you a little bit how we do open source with that. That we combine with educational content, where we really try to have non-technical people able to use those machines in a very short time. So the idea is to have craftspeople and not only engineers or designers. And then to provide kind of a community where people can support each other, share files, and really help each other thrive in their work. And so in terms of open source, what we went through, we started with a very simple tool, which is a screen printing press, completely mechanic. The idea was really to try a little bit our idea or design framework and the commercial aspects of it, which is like sending flat pack. And so we started with this very simple tool, then we moved forward to CNC milling machines, which are way more complex. You have electronics, software, hardware as well. We've developed so far around 7 open source machines with a lot of accessories as well. And those are really targeting production. So it's not only to tinker or to prototype, or those are really the tools we want to develop so people can center their job on the machines we're doing. So we have different ranges of machine depending on the need we've identified. And so the very key element here is the way we decided to design machine. We design everything for the assembly. So it means that nothing is a definitive assembly. There's nothing glued. There's nothing soldered. Everything is really using like only screw system. We try to design with at least 80% of standard industrial parts. So this is about replicability and modularity. And so with starting with those standard components, we're working with 20% of specific parts that we think should be able to be built in Fab Labs. So again, this is really the idea that you start from our design, and you can really use what you have around yourself to or develop accessories or to tweak it to your specific and local needs, or to replicate just the model. So far with those flat pack machines, we've been able to equip a little bit than 1,000 makers around 40 countries in less than 3 years. So I'm pretty proud about what we've been building so far. And we have a little team in Brussels of 11 people, which is working, I would say, 90% of the time on trying to keep the boat afloat, and 10% of the time trying to bring more open source designs and aspects to the world. And so the open source is really about a community where we're trying to help people start from more design and develop whatever they need for academic research, for other type of production. And so you see here like a few examples of people tinkering with our designs. At the moment, those people are quite technical people, it's mostly like mechanical engineers, but we would hope that developing the frameworks and the tools, more and more people can start using them and make it their own. And so I wanted to show you a little bit as well what our catalog was looking like. So this is our open source catalog, where you can actually start from the product we've developed. Not everything is there yet, but we're really working on it. And so for every product, you have access to different kind of things. The first thing is that you have, like, of course, all the technical specifications. Then you have access to 3D CAD files that are here. So this is really like a complete model where every standard parts, every little part has been designed. So if you see the assembly here, you can really, like every screw, every little bolt has been designed here. You can download this in any type of file that you can use on your CAD software. And also you have access to every part separately. So it's really easy to go from those standard parts that we've taken the time to design and to use them for even completely other kind of assembly that you would like to do. Even the electronics have been designed. So if I go on the control unit here and I remove like the covers, even like the layout of the electronics and everything are available. So you really have access to everything we've been working on. And on the side of that, you have access to all the bill of materials. So in order to know exactly all the components themselves, and you have access to assembly guides that we've tried to make kind of IKEA-like, but in better. And we want like anybody to be able to assemble this kind of machine by themselves. So we even have completely not technical people that are able to assemble their own machines. And so it looks like this. For every step, you have like the list of components, the tools you need, instructions, and like little animations that show you exactly what to do with it. And so the idea is that those assembly guides are extremely modular, and so every time there's like an iteration in the community that we're able to implement in the machine to improve it, it's very easy to change the assembly guide as well. So yeah, so the idea was really to go from understanding why local manufacturing communities are interesting, how we should connect them, and then share with you what part we've been trying to play with connecting manufacturing communities together. There's, of course, a lot of work to be done yet. In 3 years, I think we've done a lot, but also to try to find a financial and economic balance. We've taken a lot of time on the CNC part, and then we try to move away from that to develop machines in other type of crafts. We have ideas for fabrics, we have ideas for ceramics, and a lot of different things. And also at the moment, design has more been something we've done in-house, and then we're sharing it with the world. But our true idea is that we share the open source framework and we make people collaborate on it. And this we've started like last year in Amsterdam. We did like our first collaborative design marathon, where we invited 12 designers from all over Europe to work with our framework and reverse engineer industrial machines into open source one. And in 48 hours of marathon, they were able already to have like first working prototypes with all the CAD designs that were done. So when I compare it also to the challenges that have been done here, I think like the fact to have a framework and to have a preparation for those kind of challenges helps a lot. I think like a very strong output of those collaborative events. Thank you very much for your time, and I would love to share around all those things with you later or right now if you have questions, and if we have time for some questions. 10 minutes, okay. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about the presentation?
There's one right there, I think.
Hi, it's very interesting. I would like to ask this thing about collaboration. We tried to make a program with our municipality proposing cooperatives, small cooperatives, and training them. And at the end, after pandemics, it did not work. The companies only survived the companies that used to have 1 or 2 leaders, and just like a normal company, but with some social economy principles. What would you suggest for us how can we promote this collaborative model? Because I mean, we are humans, and it's kind of difficult.
It's very hard. I think it depends on a lot of parameters. It will depend on where you are, the local culture, what are the personalities of the people around as well. I think it's something that's should come from a desire of the people to collaborate it, a lot of communications. Maybe the only experience I have it with the Mechanica team, where in 2 years and 11 people, we've already had like, I don't know, 10, 12 different type of organization, and we're changing a lot of the way we work together, the way we organize each other. So it's very complex. But I think it's really through experimentation and maybe through trying to see what other people are doing that it's able to come. But the thing is, if you're an organization and you have like very strong personalities, it's not always ideal or possible. So with that, you need to reflect on the strength and the weakness of everybody. You need someone sometimes to evict some people that are harming the group, and that the group would work better together. This is something that has happened to us. So yeah, a lot of bold choices, a lot of experimentation, but I don't really have like a complete answer to that.
Thank you, Roldan, for your presentation. Love it. And the Internet of Production hopes to live up to some of the utopia that you're describing. A few comments, if I may. One is that the Wikifactory platform and the Internet of Production and a bunch of other organizations as part of the Internet of Production Alliance are registering a foundation. Okay. And Wikifactory, I can't announce this or anything. I'm not sure to what extent this is going to happen, but they are looking to open source a lot of their platform base. So to be that open source platform that you mentioned that we need, so that we're not always paying for proprietary products. Obviously, we should be paying for open products, but and then there's another really cool tool. I was looking to see if anyone from Hamburg is here, from the New Production Institute. They had a team here. There must be in workshops, but they've got an amazing little software research project that will automatically generate IKEA-style step-by-step instructions from Fusion 360 files.
That's very cool.
So that might be useful to you. Your documentation is amazing, but I think that could be quite a cool thing for you to look into.
Yeah, right now this is taking like a lot of time to make it properly.
Yeah, there's an app for that.
There's always an app for something. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third thing I wanted to ask, where do you think intellectual property fits in this utopian vision of yours? Because there's lots of open hardware conversations. I'm really interested in open hardware medical devices. For all of the, there's some horrific markups on medical devices that are supposed to save lives. Where did that, the design cost is 2% with the IKEA example, but where do you think the intellectual property world, which very much is in favor of countries like mine, the UK, and very much against countries like this, Bhutan. I think there are only 15 patent holders in Nepal. I was involved in helping someone get a patent there. Like, how do you see the patent system fitting into this utopian vision that you describe?
It's a very hard question, actually. This is a question we've had a lot about what we're building at Mechanica. And for example, the people helping us financially, they were very scared about it in the beginning. I think we kind of found a workaround at Mechanica that we're not making any deep tech innovation. We're only making like design innovations. There's not so much we can protect, and even if it was protected, could be quite easily replicated. So there's this workaround, but for way more complex products or biotech or other type of things, I think it's way more complex. I think there's a talk during the summit here about how to protect open hardware and open intellectual property. Personally, I don't know that much about it.
Any last questions?
I don't know if you know it, but I would like to have, this, like for the chair.
Yeah.
But what is the percentage of documentation of designing?
You can't find it a financial statement, but it would be very interesting to know indeed.
Yeah, but if you could think about that in some years you could provide people that, how long does it take, what is the share of, how to say, how much does it cost for you and for your customers to make it really a common?
Yeah.
Because this is a big question.
Yeah, completely. And that's what I was saying here about, I think, the common values and the idea that we should find also a way to retribute people who are contributing to common goods and not only to their individual process. So this is like of a nightmare financially to try to imagine how you could have like financial fluxes that would help open source contribution and those things. We started thinking about it in the beginning of Mechanica, thinking about we would have like a community of contributors and how we would help them get retributed for their work with really complex. Maybe there are some new technologies right now around blockchain that could help with this as well. But again, I don't have an exact answer for this.
Another, just to add on that, another amazing thing about FAB23, there's someone here who's working on that.
Okay.
So his name's Fabian,
Okay.
from Hamburg, but he's looking into the legal systems for attribution and, remuneration of design work,
Okay.
but even in the open hardware ecosystems.
Should definitely talk to him. Thanks. Okay, thank you very much.
Much. Okay, our next presenter is Jake Weigel, speaking on the augmented reality for sustainability, the 1 metric ton of carbon project. So, please give a big welcome as we get set up.
Well, thanks for showing up. This is going to be interesting. I have notes, and they're a little hard to read. So what I'm going to talk about today is using augmented reality for building campus community, specifically through the 1 metric ton carbon project. And then talking a little bit about the Fab Lab at Stan State and some other developments that have come out from this project in developing augmented reality user interface for the campus in-house. And let's see here. Okay, so you can't see me up here. That's me. I'm associate professor of art at California State University Stanislaus, which is in Turlock, California. We're one of the smaller of the 23 campuses. And then I'm also the founding director of the Warrior Fab Lab at Stan State. So just to give a little bit of context into Stan State and the student population, Turlock is located about an hour and a half from San Francisco and about 2 hours south of Sacramento. We're located in the Central Valley of California, which is very much the agricultural center. 80% of the almonds in the world come out of like the county that Turlock is located in. Walnuts, lots of, I don't know, there's a lot of vineyards and grapes, things like that. So also have some manufacturing as well as medical for industry at in the area. We're about 10,000 students. We're a Hispanic serving institution, which means that we have a majority of Hispanic students. We are a large commuter school, which means that a lot of these students live with their families and commute to school. We had a geography professor actually calculate the amount of mileage that students and faculty use annually, and it was like 20 million miles of commuting for our campus. And we are a teaching school, I guess, if you can say. So we have like one doctorate program. And so as an artist, my interest has been in, actually my background was really in working for my father, is remodeling business. So I was really interested in fine craft, really thinking about the object as a cultural artifact and the significance of that, but really looking at digital technology and how that could come into play. One of the biggest concerns in the art department is digitization of the art making process. With that, the concern or the argument usually comes from there's a loss of humanity, or there's a loss of the touch in making of objects when you start involving digital technology. It's interesting that COVID kind of eliminated some of that, but at the same time, I think a lot of teachers are going back to the before times methods in the classroom. And so as an artist myself, I'm also very interested and aware of the agency of material. So that means if I want to design something, I have to realize that the material I'm trying to make it in is going to somewhat dictate how I make it, or the overall design. And so embracing the digital aspect of making has been really important, because I've come up with designs that I wouldn't have thought of thinking about with other materials. And so I like to consider kind of this approach of the traditional analog processes in combination with the digital technology is like the soul in the computer method for art making. And so that's been really important in the development. And so here's, that was just an example of a student project where they're making something in an oil, non-drying oil plasticine clay, digitizing that, and then just one example of many that they could use for a final product. So I've been working on this for the last 6 years at Stan State, is this combination of art making. Here's an example of kind of a reverse of that, where a student takes digital models that are downloaded, pre-made, digitally collaging them, 3D printing them, and then we use that in the metal casting process. Okay, so 3D scanning is a big part of this process, taking a physical object and then digitizing it. We do this with a couple different methods. The main one is 3D scanning using either photogrammetry or a handheld scanning device. But this allows us to explore sustainable material practices by not using traditional non-sustainable sources for a lot of, or for certain object making. Metal casting, it's good for maquettes and project proposals, public art, and then of course the digital file, which goes into augmented reality or virtual reality. So it's a great way to introduce digital technology to even freshman students, is having them basically sculpt something in clay, we scan it, and then from there they can 3D print it, and we can put it into virtual reality or augmented reality, as I'll discuss. So here's some examples, one of clay and then the other of oil clay as well. So in 2020, I joined the Stan State's Council for Sustainable Futures as a faculty fellow. One of the things that I'm really interested in as an artist is collaborations with non-artists. And so this was a great opportunity to work on the council with facility services on campus, with our OIT department, with faculty from other areas, and really our approach to sustainability is almost more of a marketing at this point, as much as it is implementing sustainable practices and working with departments across campus. It's also how do we get people aware of sustainability, which is something that I'm still kind of blown away by how many of our students don't understand what sustainability means, and even thinking about what climate change is involved with. So we also look at sustainability as not just environmental sustainability, but also things like social justice, environmental justice, healthcare, and really equity. So we take a sustainable approach to all those different aspects of our lives. And so from being on the council, a project idea came up, and it was this one, which is the 1 metric ton of carbon project, which, as far as I've been able to tell, was initiated by Carbon Visuals and EcoMotion. And so the idea of this project is visualizing what carbon emissions look like. As an artist, I'm really aware that visualization is key to allowing people to understand concepts. And so that was the idea behind this. And real world visuals is, I believe Carbon Visuals is now real world visuals. And that's their main purpose, is how do you visualize a lot of these aspects for people to understand these concepts behind climate change. So as the council, we were trying to figure out what would be a way that we could bring something like this on a campus and within the community. A couple of the drawbacks being physically making something like this. We talked about making a cube, and a cube of this size is equivalent to 9 meters by 9 meters by 9 meters. So fairly significant in size scale. So talking about cost, we're talking about safety of installing it, deinstalling it, storing it. And then, of course, just the idea that we're talking about carbon emissions while using physical material. And I realize that, using technology and using computers still creates a carbon footprint, but reducing that by using digital or AR would be, a little bit better. So, let's see here. Okay, so I actually first got introduced or was made more aware of augmented reality by Pokemon Go, which is back in 2016. I was in Texas at the time teaching at the University of Texas Permian Basin, and was on the City of Odessa's Public Art Committee. And so being aware of this, kind of all of a sudden this surge of public interest in walking around the community. The way that Pokemon Go worked is that you'd have Pokestops. And in order to catch the Pokemon in this game, you'd have to go to Pokestops and get the balls to capture them. And so each one of these Pokestops was at some kind of a physical location, which was usually some kind of a significant building or landmark. And a lot of places ended up being public sculptures or murals. And so I had this interest, again, as a sculpture teacher, and then as somebody who is involved with public art, in trying to figure out a way that we can use this technology to really promote art within the community. And I also realized that was probably a short-lived phenomenon. I know Pokemon Go is still up, and I think I have students who still play it, but the surge of activity of that, the summer of like 2016, I think was really interesting. And I know that there were a few apps that were developed to try to kind of enhance public art. I know some museums and institutions were developing it and putting those on display, but ultimately I don't think that there's any apps that really succeeded as far as really promoting the arts the way that Pokemon Go was obviously so important at that time. So in thinking about this, there's, I guess the first thing is that I'm not a coder. I could go in and I can do some damage with Python and an Arduino, and that's about it for me. So I had to do some research as far as to try to figure out what the best use or the way to develop an augmented reality system for the campus might be. I first reached out to VR Owl, which I believe is based in the Netherlands, and we had several meetings and discussed what we were looking for. Essentially, they said that they could customize a user interface for us in which we could upload a model that we wanted to use for this. And that would cost about 35,000 euro, which was cost prohibitive for us. The other thing is that they don't actually host the augmented reality system as well. So we would need to go with a second company to actually put together a host site. The reason for that is we really didn't want to have an app. We wanted this to be web-based because we didn't want people to have to download something. We didn't want user information basically handed out. We wanted to protect the privacy of users in this way. And so this was one of the ways that we could develop a web-based AR system. The other is that, interestingly enough, Eighth Wall was bought out by Niantic, I think late last year, which is who developed Pokemon Go. But before that, they were a company of about 8 people. And so they were willing to work with us, but the tricky thing is in the United States, and especially California, it's called this VPAT form, which stands for the Voluntary Product Accessibility Template, which is good in spirit. It's about making sure that software is accessible for all people, but the company was not willing to work with us. They're not willing to develop it, and it's kind of a complicated document in a way. So kind of scrap that idea. During this time, I was in the kind of middle stages of developing the Fab Lab for the university. And so I had a meeting with our CIO and director of information technology, who introduced me to one of the programmers on campus. And so in discussions with this programmer, we developed this first iteration of augmented reality system for this project, which was a modeled version of our campus quad. From specs from our facility services, it was 3D printed out. And then with the black squares in the middle are actually 16 metric tons of carbon, which is the average American's annual footprint. And so again, this was just developed as a web base. You could scan a little QR code and it would pop up in your phone and you could view that. The second iteration was the 1 metric ton of carbon. And looking at both of them, there's pros and cons, but I think the impact of cube that's 9 meters by 9 meters by 9 meters showing up in front of you almost in a physical environment really gives you a better sense of what what 1 metric ton of carbon looks like as opposed to those 16 little squares. And so we developed this system in which we were able to put the QR code and the marker together so that we could put that out on campus. And by scanning that, that marker in the middle is actually where you have to hold your phone in order for that cube to populate. I guess just to go back a little bit and talk about why we have to use that marker is the fact, just like we didn't want to use an app, is that we didn't want to have, that we wouldn't be allowed to have like a geolocation set up for this, which means geolocation would be that we could pinpoint by coordinates where we would want this cube to pop up. But in doing a system like that, we would also have to basically provide user data in order to locate where that is. So in using the markers, we're again using that web-based app, and then we're making sure that the privacy of the users are maintained. So in addition to this 1 metric ton showing up in whether it's your phone or an iPad, we also have a link that populates or it goes to a website with information on it. And so this is really important for us in that education of the viewer and what 1 metric ton of carbon looks like. So on that website, we have things like this carbon footprint calculator, which allows the user to go in and enter in details about specific elements of their life, such as the house that they live in, flights that they take, type of transportation, the type of food that they eat. And so with that, here's an example. I calculated that for me to get from San Francisco to Bhutan was about 4 metric tons of carbon. So again, that information is just really essential for us to educate our students and the community about what 1 metric ton of carbon can look like, and then even how to offset that. So calculating the total footprint, there are ways, I don't know how accurate these are, the carbon offset options as far as buying back your carbon footprint, but these are also available in ways that people kind of consider to offset their footprint. Other information that's available are things like our food sources and where that supply chain comes into play with calculating footprint. So, for example, beef. Beef actually produces some of the most greenhouse gases out of all the food sources out there. Transportation is a big one. I know in the United States, it's air travel. So as I mentioned, 4 metric tons of carbon for me to get here and back contributes significantly. That's a quarter of the annual footprint just in that week of travel alone. As I mentioned, we're a commuter school, so transportation is really significant. And then just to point out, it's like, I think the United States is #2 for overall carbon footprint or carbon emissions annually. And then I think we're like 15th per capita, but we're still at that 15 to 16 metric tons of carbon annually. So with this, with these models, we've been able to table at different events on campus. This is Kat Marion, who's our director of sustainability, working with a student. You can see the AR marker in the background with the QR code. So it's one of the downsides as well, is that we have to create a pretty significant size marker. This is 4 feet by 4 feet, and we had to really figure out ways of making sure that it would work accurately. And so that's where Eric is still kind of tinkering with this user interface. But we're able to print it out on a piece of vinyl, and then we can kind of roll it up, put it anywhere we want to on campus. The other thing with this is, so with this development, the examples that I showed before with this one with the 1 metric ton and then the 3D printed, is that we realized we were going to run into some issues as far as being able to upload different models. And so we did that by trial and error. We figured out in using students that we needed to kind of maintain a certain type of file that we would upload. And so what Eric's been working on now is that user interface that allows anybody to upload the digital model. They can change the scale of it. They can change the translucency of it. They can change the color of it. And then once that's ready, it can be exported with a QR code so that we're generating that QR code for the user. They can put it up around campus. And we're planning to have that out hopefully later this year. We're putting it on GitHub as an open source file so that anybody could potentially download this AR user interface and use it. So to get into a couple other applications that we've kind of come about with this, and with the Fab Lab is we have a special collections, of course. The Fab Lab at Stan State is located in the library. And so the special collections is also there. So we've been playing around with things like, this is a field mascot from the 90s that you can see in the background is full scale. And let's see. So 3D scanning that, we can 3D print things or again, use that as a augmented reality or virtual reality. That, of course, eliminates the people needing to handle it. So it's just more of a archival kind of concern. So we're working on, I have my student assistants in the Fab Lab are working with special collections on digitizing this, special collections or in the Fab Lab. And the other thing that we're looking at doing, especially this fall semester, is getting more students involved with the 1 metric ton project itself. As the Fab Lab has come into play, I said these are kind of simultaneous projects, but also there's a lot of overlap. And my role as director of the Fab Lab is really trying to figure out ways of integrating that into the university community as well as the regional community as well. So we're looking for interdisciplinary students essentially to work on this project. And these are just some of the ways that students can get involved with it. So the modeling and printing, of course, AR development, the coding side and beta testing, but even things like figuring out other ways of calculating carbon footprints, user surveys and statistics that we can use in the Council for Sustainable Futures, marketing promotion of that, getting into public policy initiatives, working with the campus community and the regional community, and website development. So lots of opportunities. And to connect with the Fab Lab a little bit, is that again, as we're kind of developing more, our ribbon cutting grand opening was actually just in April. We've been open since October of 22. And so rather than just placing the Fab Lab, we're working on integrating that. And a couple of ways that we're doing that is developing online instructions, tutorials, creating workshops. We had a couple summer camps already this summer. We have pre-service exposure, which my colleague, Dr. Adam Devitt, is right here. He's a teacher in teacher development, professor, teacher in teacher development. We have K-12 teacher development and faculty development that we're also kind of working on. So it's been very fast-paced in how we've already been able to kind of integrate things. And that comes into more of the community building side of this augmented reality in the Fab Lab. I have to show this picture because it's really great. Adam's not in it. I don't know what you were doing at that time, but I have a really great group of students. And just as I mentioned about interdisciplinary studies, I think all 4 of our colleges are represented with a student assistants. So I'm trying to make sure that it's not art departments, it's very much the university department or university's Fab Lab. We have a lot of the common equipment in there. And so this is another project that we're working on, which deals more on the social justice, ethnic studies role. And Kinfolk is one of those apps that probably came out of the Pokemon Go kind of ideation. It also came out, let's see, I have some details here. It was the Movers and Shakers, part of their Monuments project, which if you're familiar with the US, the Confederate sculpture concerns and tearing those down and having them replaced. This project came out of an idea from that. So essentially creating public sculptures as an AR movement that could replace those Confederate sculptures. This is an app based, so one of the ideas behind this is that we can actually kind of use our AR system to develop our own kind of a similar project. So Stan State is developing these cultural sites basically around campus that they're going to host different events for. And so this is one project that we're working on with our AR system where students can do research, they can download or create their own models of various historical figures, and then that information is provided during these events. Here's an example, student example again of a possibility for placing something as a public sculpture on campus. So we're talking about creating a public sculpture garden as a virtual or as an augmented reality possibility with that. And then lastly, we worked on the summer camp, and Adam and I weren't able to attend because we were traveling. This was a high school summer camp that we worked on. We worked with some faculty from Stan State, with high school teachers from the region. We have some doctorate students. Yeah, PhD student from UC Merced was one of the faculty cohorts. And then we brought in students that were from local high school, underrepresented minority and economically disadvantaged backgrounds, so that they could come in and have a week-long summer camp for free in the Fab Lab. We also have our Fab Lab students involved. We have, as I mentioned, the doctoral students. And so this was a really great synthesis of all of these people who had never really been in the Fab Lab before, and figuring out ways to really engage with the community in this idea of kind of social environmental justice. And so I was sent these pictures by our colleague back in California, and I have to say I'm just so excited to see that this kind of thing is happening without me, because it's good to see that the Fab Lab will continue and is really gaining some ground within the community. So these are some of the teachers, the high school teachers, and they'd never experienced any of this before. Process of ideation, everybody was journaling every day as part of this camp so that they were learning about themselves, kind of that metacognitive ability that's so important. So some of the designs, again, really thinking about 2D design, that hands-on analog process and creating some kind of a digital output from that. And the result of the summer camp was a virtual reality mural that came from a lot of these designs. So I have a couple on using iPads. We have a large format printer that they printed these out on. And then this was not the professional documentation culmination, but at least a little kind of insight into it. And so in those cultural, I guess, sites, we can call them, that are designated sites on Stan State, that's where we can use augmented reality again for things like mural projects. We have some plans to work with artists specifically to create some kind of an augmented reality murals that can be placed up. And again, all it takes then is a little QR code that people can scan, and they populate themselves. So that is my presentation, and thank you for attending and take any questions that you have.
Do you have any questions for Jake?
First, I just want to say thank you for your consideration of the carbon footprint of what you're doing. I think it's honorable and necessary. And I wondered if there's any opportunity to use upcycled material or clean waste in your Fab Lab.
Yeah, I did attend part of the workshop on recycling the PLA filament, and we've discussed that in the past, and that's certainly one way that we've looked at. I think that what the workshop was essentially not recycling it as filament, but recycling it as a material that can be heated up and formed into other materials. So yeah, that's definitely one way of doing it. Yeah, so yes, we're working on figuring out other ways that, yes, we can upcycle and reuse materials.
Thank you for your presentation. And I've never really seen carbon footprint and augmented reality combined together. So I'm going to tell people stories about this. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
This isn't really related to what you were speaking about, though. My question is really for your opinion. The previous presentation talked about local manufacturing. A lot of what I'm doing is trying to create networks of local manufacturers to complement mass production. So rather than 200,000 items being made in Turkey or India or China and then shipped, make them in 2,000 locations, with each location making 100 for the local market, sort of thing, on the same contract. What do you think the carbon footprint of that would be? Because mass production processes can be often very carbon efficient, whereas having a large number of very small, inefficient machines might not be. But then you've got a huge amount of shipping. Do you have any opinions on this as you've thought about carbon footprint in the maker movement?
Well, I could see, I mean, it makes sense that if you're able to I guess one of the cool things about the Fab Lab network is that in digitalization is that you can transfer that information, right? So, and that's a key component. So in that sense, if you can't, it does seem like if you could send out, the plans to, say 20 different Fab Labs, that they can produce the same as a centralized production. And it makes sense. I mean, that the products in those locations are going to be used regionally. That I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. What's that?
Ship bits, not atoms.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, so I like that idea.
Any final questions? Okay, thank you so much, Jake.
All right, thank you.
We're going to take some time to set up for the next the next talk and the next performance, which is very exciting. So we'll get started in about 5-10 minutes. So we appreciate your patience. Thank you. maybe this is a good opportunity for people sitting in the back to move forward. So we've got a really strong and engaged audience for our next performance. No? Okay.
Clinic is an R&D lab for social and environmental issues. Solutions to challenges faced by underserved communities. We identify unmet needs, test potential solutions, and share results so they can be replicated. Planet is an R&D lab for social and environmental issues. We find solutions for challenges faced by underserved communities. We identify unmet needs, test potential solutions, and share results so they can be replicated. For example, we work with farmers to make their post-harvest process more efficient. We collaborate with companies on products and services that address unmet needs. We partner with government and development organizations to achieve the sustainable development goals. Include data on what works and what doesn't. If you're looking for effective solutions to social and environmental
Yes, I would like to be able to play, studying about the beauty, story can be played.
Maybe the guitar is not too sharp. Maybe the high is got this.
Brother, let's go down, come on down. Oh, come on, brother, let's go down, down to the river to pray. Sharp. Better maybe the kick is a bit down a bit. So. Sorry for the sound check. So you child crawling on your knees, starting. How's the sound, Eva? Making mama so proud. Your voice is too loud. Maybe we need a louder sound check so I can invite everybody outside coming in. Everyone outside. Rock concert inside. Console yourself. Take only what you need from me. A family of trees wanting to be healthy. Control yourself. Take only what you need from me. A family of trees wanting to be healthy. The water is warm, but it's sandy. Crying out for attention. Every street like decision to decision are made up of enough thought. Wouldn't hurt a lot, I guess not. Woo! Control yourself. Take only what you need from me. A family of trees wanting to be healthy. Control yourself. Take only what you need from me. A family of trees wanting to be healthy. Control yourself. Take only what you need from me. Family of trees wanting to be healthy. Control yourself. Take only what you need from me. Family of trees.
Fenomena sampah kiriman yang terjadi hampir setiap tahun ini mencapai 25 ton.
we're ready to get started. It is my great pleasure to introduce Eva Wojkowska and Sergina Long for their panel From Inspiration to Action, How Art, Music, and Mixed Media Can Catalyze Resilience-Building Efforts.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to our session today. My name is Eva Wojkowska. I'm here with my colleagues Gina and Robbie. We've come to amazing Bhutan from Bali, Indonesia, where I believe some of you were at the FAB Fest last year. We're from an organization called Copernic. It's an Indonesia-based organization, and we focus on solving social and environmental challenges. And we're so happy to share some of our work with you today. And on Friday, my colleague Abel, who's sitting over there, will be sharing some work that's a continuation from last year's FAB Fest, where they won the FAB Challenge. And that's on Friday at 12, also in this room. So please join Abel. So a little bit about Copernic. I'm the co-founder, and we're an organization that you can think of as a research and development lab for social and environmental challenges. So now I'm just going to play a really short video, which will hopefully work, that introduces some of our work to you.
Copernic is an R&D lab for social and environmental issues. We find solutions for challenges faced by underserved communities. We identify unmet needs, test potential solutions, and share results so they can be replicated. For example, we work with farmers to make their post-harvest process more efficient. We collaborate with companies on products and services that address unmet needs. We partner with government and development organizations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and collect data on what works and what doesn't. If you're looking for effective solutions to social and environmental challenges, let's collaborate to find what works.
Okay, so we've been around for 13 years now, so officially a teenager. And over the years, we've been testing a whole range of different approaches to solve social and environmental challenges. These have included technologies or behavioral science experiments, and we've learned over this time that it's actually really difficult to get people to change their behavior. It's really difficult to get people to care about the climate crisis. It's difficult to get people to stop using single-use plastic. It's difficult to get people to change the way they practice their agriculture to be more sustainable. So because so much of our work comprises of changing behavior and getting people to care and getting people to change how they do things, we found that a really effective way of doing that is through the creative sector, through music, through film, working with artists, working with stand-up comedians who can touch people in a way that our reports or our trainings or all the things that we typically do as non-profit or development organizations, we aren't often great at convincing people, whereas musicians are really effective at doing that, and film is really effective at doing that. So I am going to ask Gina to tell you a little bit about our work with the creative sector. But before that, I'm curious, who here has worked with musicians, filmmakers, artists, the creative sector in the past? And fantastic. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Eva. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy that some of us here in the room also have worked with the creative sector and would love to hear your stories or experience working with them later during our discussion. So as Eva has mentioned, we've been working with the creative sector in the past 10 years through different type of partnerships. So this is really these are some of our projects where we work with the creative industry through where we integrate creative media, any forms of creative media, film, as everybody mentioned before, music, and also other type of communications media. And these projects have effectively promoted our work, the impact of our projects, the solutions that we share, also in engaging with a broader audience. So, for example, here for our Women's Economic Empowerment Program, we work with Indonesian musicians, celebrities, key opinion leaders for a campaign called Indonesian Women for Energy. And it aims to promote and to advocate for women's role in extending energy access in Indonesia's remote areas. Another example is YouTube video series that we produced in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was a news form that provide information and practical tips for our communities to stay safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. Another one is virtual reality videos. We call it VR for SDGs. So we, through this content, through these videos, we hope that it will help articulate challenges that need to be addressed to achieve the SDGs. Another example is podcasts. So this podcast called A Soundtrack of Resistance. So this is a podcast telling stories about social and environmental issues in Indonesia through the song of Navikula. We'll know more about what Navikula is later on, but the founder is here, Robbie. And this podcast aims to showcase the important role of music in showcasing and in amplifying the participation, public participation to tackle social and environmental issues. The last two projects are Pulau Plastik and Iklim that we'll share a bit more later. So Pulau Plastik, or Plastic Island in English, utilizes different forms of media, such as film, and this is to increase awareness and public understanding about the hazard of single-use plastic. And Iklim is the recent initiatives that we created. Iklim itself means climate in English, and we work with Indonesian musicians to get Indonesian people to care about the climate issue. So first, before we continue, I'd like us to watch this short video, one of the media that we produced for the Pulau Plastik project.
Fenomena sampah kiriman yang terjadi hampir setiap tahun ini mencapai 25 ton per hari. Setelah Pantai Kuta diserbu sampah kiriman, kini giliran Pantai Sanur dan pantai lain yang dipenuhi sampah.
Kurang dari 5 menit, saya sudah menemukan sedotan plastik sedemikian banyak.
Sampah yang datang dari laut, kemungkinan besar sampah itu datangnya dari Jakarta. Nah, kalau sampah itu datangnya dari Jakarta, kemungkinan besar sampah itu sampah kita.
Oh man, it's freaking strong.
That's plastic. Indonesia saat ini menyandang gelar sebagai negara kedua terbesar dunia penyumbang sampah plastik ke lautan. Di Indonesia beredar lebih dari 93 juta sedotan plastik setiap harinya.
Sering banget ketemu sachet yang tahun 80-an. Nah itu mungkin Indomie yang kita makan waktu kita masih SD nyampe ke sini gitu.
Donald Trump, jangan buang sampah ke Indonesia. Indonesia bukan tempat sampahnya Amerika. Sampah plastik ini sulit untuk diolah, Pak. Dan untuk ini harus dicuci, dipelet, itu butuh air yang banyak, dibuang ke sungai, dan juga dibakar. Nah, itu bahan kimia keluar.
Masyarakat ini tidak tahu bahwa membakar plastik itu akan menghasilkan racun dan bersifat pemicu kanker.
Apa mikroplastik di banteng ini menunjukkan
saja terkontaminasi ya.
Kontaminasi mikroplastik.
Berarti yang pink ini kemungkinan ada di saluran pencernaan saya juga kan?
Produksi makanan itu bukan dari darat biasanya lebih banyak, tapi dari laut. Nah kita nanti kalau 2050 lebih banyak plastik, kita mau makan plastik.
So yeah, this was the trailer of the Pulau Plastik film, which I will talk a bit more later. But maybe some of you recognize Robbie's face in the trailer, right? So yes, Robbie is one of the protagonists of the Flow Plastic film, and we are really fortunate to have him joining us this evening, this afternoon. And thank you so much to the FAB team for helping us sorting out his visas issues. So big thank you to the FAB team. And yeah, just a brief introduction about Robbie. Robbie is an activist, a musician, obviously. He's also a farmer and the founder of Navikula, a really well-known band in Indonesia. He will talk more about himself and what Navikula is through his music. Over to you, Robbie.
Thank you, Gina. So man, it's like I'm still amazed being in Bhutan. It's like I've been dreaming for a long time to be here. Thank you so much for the organizer who arranged my visa in the last minute. So I'm gonna pick this song. It's gonna sing in Bahasa, but we have the translation here. Let's become universal. And this song is actually the official soundtrack for the film Flow Plastic. And the song is called Metamorphosa Kata, means the metamorphosis of words, which is actually I dedicate this song to all of you that in this Fab Lab, in the Fab Festival, that actually already transform all the idea and the words into an action. So here we go. So actually we invite you, if you want to just get some like a popo or stage diving, please feel free. I know like most of you are like a geek in the computer, so lazy to go to the gym. So your gym now is here in the concert show. So here we go. Kata-katamu hinggap dan hidup di kepalaku. Dia tak tidur, tapi dia terus membangunkanku, mengiba untuk membebaskannya. Dia bilang, ubahlah aku jadi wujud baru. Dia sudah bosan sekian lama hidup tanpa badan. Begitu diucapkan, dia menuntut terus untuk dilahirkan oleh tanganku dan tanganmu dan tangan-tangan semesta. Dia bilang, ubahlah aku jadi tindakan. All of you make some noise. Harus ada yang menciptakan kata-kata agar tak terpenjara di pokok wacana. Karena dia takkan jawab pertanyaan, pasti kalau bicara lebih bermakna jika kau pikir, kau bilang, kau lakukan. Sekian lama hidup tanpa badan. Begitu diucapkan, dia menuntut terus untuk dilahirkan oleh tanganku dan tanganmu dan tangan-tangan semesta. Dia bilang, ubahlah aku jadi tindakan. Harus ada yang menciptakan kata-kata agar tak terpenjara di pokok wacana. Karena dia takkan jawab pertanyaan, tapi kalau bicara lebih bermakna jika harus ada yang menciptakan kata-kata agar tak terpenjara di pokok wacana. Karena dia takkan jawab pertanyaan, tapi kalau bicara lebih bermakna jika kau pikir, kau bilang, kau lakukan. Thank you. Back to Gina again.
Thank you, Robbie.
Okay, more song to come.
Yes,
You can
yes,
always-
yes, yes. We will hear more about Robbie, from Robbie, and more from his magic, awesome music. But first, let me share a little bit more about what Pulau Plastic is, and how we utilize these different media, different types of media, in raising awareness of our community. So Pulau Plastic was created in 2018, in early 2018, after seeing the growing problem of plastic pollution in Bali. And especially when our government declared a garbage emergency in late 2017. So as an organization working and based in Bali, we feel that we are really close. We see that we are really close to the problem, and we wanted to contribute to improve our community's understanding about the issue, and also to get them involved, taking actions and advocating for solutions. So we created Pulau Plastic specifically for local communities in Bali, using a behavior change approach to shift attitude and behavior towards the usage of single-use plastic. And to achieve our goals, we utilize these different popular culture, such as social media campaigns, the series, film, and also a podcast episode. So our social media campaigns provide practical solutions, practical actions to reduce and refuse single-use plastics, and also provide alternatives to single-use plastic packaging. Our educational series, that also called Pulau Plastic, or Plastic Island, has 4 episodes, and each episode has 20 minutes only, and it covers issues surrounding single-use plastics, such as microplastic, household sorting and disposal, government policy, food and hospitality industry, as well as Balinese philosophy and its relationship with single-use plastic. And the 4 episodes are available on YouTube. So please, if you're interested to watch, we have the English subtitle. Go to YouTube and search Pulau Plastic, or go to our website, pulauplastic.org, where you can find more information about Pulau Plastic, and link to YouTube is also there. And another one is the film, which you have watched the trailer earlier. So the film explores the extent of how plastic has entered our food chain and is impacting our body and our health. And it's also provide what can be done to address this issue. And I think I did mention that maybe I did not mention that the film was released in Indonesian cinemas in 2021. And just last year, in June last year, the film has been available globally on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, please check them out and watch them. It also has English subtitle. And another one is podcast. So this is one episode, part of a soundtrack of resistance that I did mention earlier. And we explored the topic about the silent day in Bali, and how Bali becomes the first province in Indonesia to ban single-use plastic, through one of Navikula's songs that calls Bali Berani Berhenti, or Bali Dares to Stop. So it's really, really interesting podcast if you want to know about Bali and about the movement that communities conducted in Bali. So because we are based in Bali, we put significant effort in supporting the Bali government's regulations to ban single-use plastic. So if you see here, Robbie was talking to the governor of Bali, the guy in white t-shirt, and the vice governor of Bali, the guy with the black polo shirt. And in everything that we produce, all the content, all the media that we produce, we continuously encourage our community to refuse, and so not only reduce but refuse single-use plastic. Like we provide practical solutions, like concrete actions on what to do to refuse single-use plastic. So one here, for example, if you see, Robbie is holding his shopping from the market, and he used all reusable containers. So Robbie was attempted to do what we call as puasa plastic or single-use plastic fast. And so basically he refused to use single-use plastic throughout a month. And did you succeed? Yeah, I remember, and we made the video also about how difficult it was, the challenges that he faced during that 1 month. So basically, it was throughout Ramadan. So we have many friends conducting fasting during Ramadan, and Robbie, he's not fasting for food and water, but he fasted for single-use plastic. And another one is also that we continuously promote local businesses that produce alternatives to single-use plastic using natural materials, like what we can see in these photos. So bamboo basket, bamboo cups or mugs, straws, and all that. Really, the aim is really to promote local values and natural resources as alternative to single-use plastic packaging. So throughout the years, so it's been now 6 years since we implemented this project. We've been working with many organizations, governments, and also private sectors to help us to strengthen this effort and to address this issue of single-use plastic pollution in Indonesia. And one of, for example, we've collaborated with more than 50 organizations across Indonesia to form a coalition to advocate for a nationwide policy that bans single-use plastic. So at the time we created Pulau Plastic in 2018, there were only 14 cities that banned single-use plastic. And now there are more than 100 cities across Indonesia that have enacted single-use plastic regulations. And we see a growing number of local communities that are taking part of addressing this issue. So we see really, really positive impact, and how we see that this type of initiative would encourage and would inspire our communities to being part of the change. So that's all about Pulau Plastic. Next, Eva and Robbie will share our other initiative that called Iklim or Climate.
Thank you, Gina. So because a lot more of our work increasingly focuses on the climate crisis, on climate change adaptation, on environmental issues, and because we've seen and we've got evidence about the power of music and the arts to move people, to get people to care, and get people to act. Earlier this year, we started the IKLIM, which is the Indonesian Knowledge, Climate, Arts and Music Lab. And what it is, it's a collective of musicians. We're working with a bigger group of musicians. We've been working with Robbie and his band, Navicula, for about 6 years now. And we work with them because they've got a really solid track record of working on environmental issues. And so here is a photo of Robbie 11 years ago, a bit younger. But here he was working with Greenpeace, supporting their anti-deforestation campaign on the islands of Kalimantan and Sumatra. So because we've been successfully working with Robbie and Navicula, we thought, let's work with more musicians, let's work with more artists in Indonesia to have an even bigger impact and really get people to care about the climate crisis, because we see it as an effective way. We see it as a really important and an effective way of reaching young people who make up a very significant part of the Indonesian voting population and have power to really make a difference. So I am going to hand over to Robbie first for a song and then later to talk a little bit more about Iklim. And this is a song that he actually wrote while he was on this particular trip 11 years ago in the jungle. Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you, Ewa. So, okay. So this is a special song. Why this is a special song? Because it was composed in the middle of rainforest in the Sumatra and Borneo during the trip. So actually, I mean, it's like even with big band, quite a big band, you know, there is no big band now. Which Facebook kill all the bands. So, but at the time we do fundraising, crowdfunding at Kickstarter.com to fund our trip to Borneo to make another documentary film at the time. And then we passed the forest for 2,500 kilometers for 14 days on the dirt bike making film. And then we actually plan to make a film about capturing the rainforest in Borneo and Sumatra, but actually we end up hunting rainforest because most of the rainforest is being destroyed. So it's sad film actually. And we composed this song, is called Forest, so that's why this song I picked for today, because it has strong connection. I have a strong feeling with forest, so after I made that song, few years later when I have a daughter, I give my daughter name Rimba, which means forest in Indonesia. And what is the strong relation with Bhutan, because why I love to come here, because I heard that Bhutan regulation is minimum the area should be 60% covered in forest. Oh, it's such a big inspiration. I'm salute for Bhutan for doing this. And Bhutan succeed to keep it for 72%, 72% right on the area right now. It's inspiring. I wish Indonesia can keep their rainforest for like I get inspiration. It's a lot of inspiration that I bring from Bhutan to there. So that's why this song is called Forest di Rimba. Okay, anyway, every time we play this song in Indonesia, we always invite the audience to mimicking all the animals that you know. Who's been in the forest before? I know, like not only rainforest or tundra, ice, subtropical forest. You've been in the forest, and then must be you listen all the animal, the orchestra of animal in the rainforest, right? So, any of you can pick your favorite animal, even the scary one, and then turn our FAB Fest today here into the forest. Come on. Come on, make it 72%. Aku bermalam di rimba, di tepi sungai suara, dibuai kedamaian sempurna, di kaki kayu raksasa, di pundak batu perkasa. Come on, animal. Ku rangkai puji bagi pencipta. Cinta, dirimba. Dirimba ku jumpa semesta.
semesta. Hiasi cahaya bintang, halimun membelai sayang. Di sini jiwaku pun telanjang, hanya jiwa yang telanjang di dalam rimba yang tenang, yang mampu bedakan gelap terang. Aku jumbo semesta, di rimbaku jumbo semesta.
Thank you. So this is my band Navikula. So we start in 1996, so almost 26 years ago. So this is a concert from a week ago, last weekend before we fly here. So and the concept from the beginning of the Navikula band, you can see it in the Spotify. It's available in any platform or in YouTube. And then it's combining music and activism, because it's like this is not original idea. I got inspired by a band like Midnight Oil from Australia, or Rage Against the Machine, or Sepultura, and I got inspired by everybody has an idol, right, as a role model. Like I personally inspired by like John Lennon to bring 100,000 people to the street to against the Vietnam War, or a story like maybe the story about 6 activists back on the day on the 70s trying to protest the nuclear test in Arctic, and they don't have money, and they asked Joni Mitchell to, hey, we are poor activists, can you make a concert to funding this movement? And then Joni Mitchell say, okay, cool. And then success story about a music concert funding this movement. And after that protest, and this a group of 6 people is continue to make one of the biggest environmental organization called Greenpeace. So Greenpeace start in the music concert. I know it's like a story like this one is always inspire me, and I got this button, and then trying to pass the button for our followers or our new bands so they can do the same thing or do the better story. But been 26 years in the music and activism, I realized that only one band cannot do this. It's very difficult, so we need more band and musician to join the cause, especially Indonesia is quite a big music industry, and also big film industry. So that's why when we collaborate with Copernic and then create Iklim, is actually to bring more catalog about music that speak about ecological crisis, climate crisis, and then social voice. And this is we launching Iklim early this year, and then just April we get support from the musician, our friends that care. They're like big name in Indonesia. So we gonna make the catalog, and then actually also is the first catalog in Indonesia, maybe in Asia, that's bring the music to amplify about this issue. And and you can see like there are like have a big follower. Yeah, if we combine their follower is can reach 5 millions in social media. So it's actually has big impact, and we want to not only the music, not only the musician, but also everyone that related to the music industry, like a journalist, media can help us, or festival. So it's become a popular issue that can affect it, the political decision. Next. So the strategies of IKLIM, we established on April, we established like I just months ago, we established Alarm Record. This is first green label in Indonesia, maybe in Asia. And not only for Indonesia, we also make a networking with friends in Philippines, music like a group like in Myanmar, in Cambodia, and everywhere in the South Asia. And then maybe we encourage Bhutan to, we can collaborate, like Indonesia, Bhutan, make this kind of collaboration. Next time, I promise I'm gonna bring my band here if the visa is not difficult. We'll bring, and then do some collaboration with the Bhutan artists and sharing some idea. So all the 14 bands that was on before, now we are in the process of recording, gonna release this next year. And also we actually also affiliated or make a collaboration with Music Declare Emergency based in UK. It's already been years work running. 6,000 artists join this cause, and actually the initiator also musician like Tom York from Radiohead, Billie Eilish, or Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, Fatboy Slim, Arcade Fire, so many, like 6,000. So we have a contact, and then, hey, how you made the same movement in Indonesia, because Indonesia facing also a very urgent natural environmental problem, and then it's like, oh, why not? And then we're doing it, and just launching also last April on the Earth Day. And we believe music and then creative sector, because maybe nowadays in the music industry we much underestimate about this media, how powerful this media can be. It's like me personally, like because I love also history, so I can see like it's actually past the traditional way, like all the our religion, even the heavy topic is spread in Indonesia and many countries through the art, through the songs, shadow puppet songs, mantra, or everything. Even our pray is like using a melody, and so we just continue this spirit or this method, but through the rock and roll. And because I love music, you know, everybody love music, and then we do believe like we love what we do and do what we love, but do it with care. So we put our care is about social and environmental issues. So it's combining this what we love and what we care. And then we believe also this is heavy topic. It's not the job for the government, not the job of the NGO or activists, but also everyone can involve, academic, politician, corporate. We do believe that everybody has the kindness in everyone. So everyone, the kindness is like I don't want to harm other people, don't want to harm the nature and then the future. So we just it's like encourage that good side. And before we fly here, like a few weeks ago, we doing a workshop with all the musicians, because we want, like when we spread this information or this campaign, we want the musician also, our friends, have a deep understanding about the issue. So it's not just like a shallow influencer, but we want to understand about the deep issue, like in the political level, in the multilateral, in the global, and then what we can do, local solution. I think global, act local style. And actually, this is the summary of the workshop we want to share with you. What happened like a few weeks ago. Okay, Gina. Yeah, in the beginning before the workshop, I get pessimistic. Yeah, how to bring like all the artists with this like a cool and then a cool thing. Like, it's like to bring in the heavy topic workshop, like people from many activists talking about the data, the government data, and everything. Is how to bring these people in the workshop 4 days intensive without feeling sleeping and then just escape for cigarette breaks. So, but actually, it's turned out it's become a fun workshop. Like everybody's so involved. Like even some like really take it like emotionally, and then we have some really beautiful collaboration going to come. And after the workshop, when we share it to everyone's social media, we got so many DM direct message that hey, all from other musicians in Indonesia. Indonesia is a big country, 17,000 islands. How we can enjoy, how we can join, how we can involve, how we can help and everything. And some festival, how we can offset our carbon. So it slowly it's become like a snowball. It's like also inviting. But that's what we want. So we want more people in the music industry want to support this cause. So we now doing still more, invite more people through this campaign. And this is maybe it's like any of you working with a musician or artist, you can join also to support this campaign. So that's yeah, please any. And maybe gonna back to Gina, or maybe there's an Q&A or.
Sorry. Yeah, so we have 5 minutes for a question or two before Robbie play more songs tonight.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say that I think this is all very inspiring and very cool. I have a couple questions. So first, you called yourself a musician and an activist. And I mean, it's inspiring that your action clearly extends beyond the music, that can only affect so much change. But I'm interested, was there one side of that equation that came first? Is there one you prioritize more? Have you ever found the two sides of that coin at odds with each other and at risk of falling out of balance? Or conversely, have you found them in situations where they work particularly well to amplify each other?
Yeah, actually, it's happened naturally. Actually, I mean, it's like I grew up from the farmer family, so we have a coffee farm up in the mountain, and it's like my grandpa. It's like from generation to generation, we practicing the traditional culture, and then when we grow up, then we still carry this value, and then it's like naturally. I'm kind of also lucky live in Bali. Because Bali quite like a melting pot, lots of social environmental organization, the headquarters in Bali. So it's lucky we have this kind of environment where the place where I grew up and making band. And then also my family very active in that's one, and then all the friends. So our environment also naturally encourage us, and especially in the one side, Bali is very massive industry for the tourists and everything. And any industry will be working parallel with the natural degradation, like the quality have a lot of problem in Indonesia, have deforestation. So the problem and then the solution actually is quite happen in the one place, like a lot of local initiative. And then when I make music, then it's naturally everything that surround us become the inspiration. So actually it's working parallel organically. So then, and actually it's also my background. Actually, I'm a farmer and also I'm an agroecologist. So study with permaculture designer, and also I got my study with Vandana Siva up in the India because of the project of related to the sustainable agriculture. And when we talking about this issue a lot on the coffee table, and then at night I trying to make my song, so I just that's I interested about the topic, I just transform it into song. So it's natural.
I'm also interested. You mentioned John Lennon as an influence in like activist music, and that sort of brought to mind for me the impact of the original song in the 70s versus something like the cringeworthy YouTube video that a bunch of celebrities made at the start of COVID using the same song. And I think there's something really interesting about an artistic medium like using music to push an agenda forward, is that it beyond just being outreach, you also put yourself into the arena of subjective taste and aesthetic criticism. And have you ever found being in that environment to be especially difficult? Has it ever been impactful on the message, or do you find that having a message amplifies the aesthetic reception of your songs by your audience?
Yeah, it's quite challenging because it's combining the aesthetic side and then the heavy topic. Yeah, means like it's quite challenging. So that's why actually the artist can combine these two things, like keep it aesthetic nice. It's like it looks good, sounds good, but also combining with the valid information. So that's why in this kind of activism and music, we need to collaborate with so many institutions, not just hang out with musicians, but also with academic, with the researcher, with Copernic, for example. Copernic is the research lab, and then lots of update information. So yeah, I think it's like I grew up with the punk rock attitude, like a do it yourself thing, but actually the era of now is like a do it yourself is dead. Now we do it together. So even like we believe like the change is gonna be happen if there is a collaboration between government, private sector, community, cultural leader, and then artists and public participation.
Other questions?
So it's the only question? Yeah?
Okay.
So, okay.
Great. Thank you so much. Then if anyone still interested to talk with us later, we'll be around for a bit, then we can talk and share stories and experiences.
Sorry, because if it's only have one question, so maybe you can I give a coffee from my farm for you. You still have left one.
Yay!
Try Indonesian coffee. Okay, time to coffee and music is the best thing. Okay, the next song is inspired by, thank you, it's like a growth and then peak and then process with love. And rock and roll. And it's strong, be careful, you're not gonna sleep. You're gonna ready to party. So this song is the song that I was made like when I was teenager, but actually still relevant till now. It's about a farmer, ballad of farmer. And in Indonesia, like the farmer nowadays is on the average age is only 55 years old, and then the kids of the farmer is only 3% who continue the profession to be a farmer. Actually, it's become a big threat, right? It's like when the farmer, they getting old in the next 5 years, stop doing, it's only 3% of their successor, the kids that continue what they're doing. And which is actually talking about Bhutan's like happiness and everything. One of the factor of happiness is good food, right? So this is the Bhutan food. So I'm really food lover, and then is the best, easy, fun way to learning about the cultural in one place is by enjoying and then trying the authentic cuisine. Which one is your Bhutan's favorite food that I need to try? I already tried sikampa, batup, momo. Yeah. Give me a recommendation. So this song is called Balada Petani, means a ballad of a farmer.
Katanya tanah negeri kita kaya raya, kaya hasil bumi hadiah ibu pertiwi. Katanya negeri kita negeri agraris, tapi ada wabah kelaparan, oh ironis. Anakku nangis, hei petani duka, rindukan tanah moyangnya yang dulu pernah ditukar dosa. Hei lahan yang hijau bermandi sinar mentari, yang kini mulai hiasi mimpi. Hei petani duka, rindukan tanah moyangnya yang dulu pernah ditukar dosa. Wow, lahan yang hijau bermandi sinar mentari, yang kini mulai hiasi mimpi. Mimpi tiap malam. Anak negeri. Petani kita kini sudah jadi jangki, tergantung pestisida dan pupuk kimia. Harga produksi gila, panen laba gak ada, kebijakan pangan ada di tangan mafia. Kebutuhan hidup tak bisa lagi ditunda, lahan desa terjual, orang kota membelinya. Uang ternyata tak bisa bertahan lama, petak sawah terakhir menunggu gilirannya. Terjual juga. Hei petani duka, rindukan tanah moyangnya yang dulu pernah ditukar dosa. Hei lahan yang hijau bermandi sinar mentari, yang kini mulai hiasi mimpi. Hei petani duka, rindukan tanah moyangnya yang dulu pernah ditukar dosa. Wow, lahan yang hijau bermandi sinar mentari, yang kini mulai hiasi mimpi. Mimpi tiap malam. Anak negeri. Hingga rumput pun sirna, sapi makan temannya, dan sapi-sapi pun jadi gila.
Thank you. Okay, to close, one more song. The next song is gonna be in English. It's also our Navikula old song. Actually, Navikula, my band is like playing more hard metal, psychedelic song. So it's really actually it's challenging for me to transfer into acoustic. You know, it's like a painting, an oil painting, transfer it into the watercolor. Or it's make me feel like standing naked in the front of the audience. So this song, I mean, it's like we have hope. Of course, we have hope in this skeptical world. So that's why we are here all tonight and the last few days. But also we have a challenging. So this song is called Peace Pretenders. And the idea with songs like even we have living in the skeptical world, we still keep this hope to keep us doing the best that we can. Taken for me for personally, it's like especially when you have daughter or have a son or have kids, it's become personal. The social and environmental issues become personal because it's like a responsible, like what world that we're gonna give to our kid. Yeah, so it's become more personal and personal. And the song is actually there is a lyric about even this fucked up world that we have, but still like lots of good people doing a good stuff. And then this lyric in these songs like we believe like all the good mind that scatter everywhere in the world. When you're doing something, when you want to do something, then the universe gonna unite us together somehow and can make a collaboration. So I do believe like if all our prophets imagines like all the religion prophets or the spiritual leader that living at the same place at the same time, maybe they make a rock band. so this song is called Peace Pretenders. Peace was just for show by those who want control. Their greed consumes the world, and we forgot what love can hold. Peace will stay with me wherever I go. Peace will stay with me if like in my dreams the prophets are wanting, they could make us see that this is everything. We have lost almost everything except love. It can be beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Peace is everything, yeah. We have lost, we have lost, we have lost. This is just in my dreams. In this world we kill, kill, kill. Thank you.
huge thank you, and I think we need one more round of applause. Thank you all for coming tonight. I would like to take this as a reminder that we are so privileged to be able to share this space, and we've noticed that people are leaving trash and bottles around the facility, as well as in the workshop rooms and on the machines. So we appreciate your help in keeping the space beautiful and assisting the people who are helping us do that. So please, 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 not only take care of your own trash, but if you see water bottles lying around, we have a specific dumpster or skip for plastic, single-use plastic water bottles. And if we all do a little bit, then it'll be so much easier for the rest of us. So thank you again. Please come back tomorrow for the economic opportunity track, and we hope that you're having a great FAB23. Good night.